right, so indifferent from how I normally start the videos, which I start right at the beginning of the song, I'm actually going to start at the verse here in War Pigs. Now, one of the things that I think makes War Pigs so cool is this sort of push and pull of major and minor feel, right? This sort of battle between light and dark that goes on the whole time. And I'm going to start by explaining the verse.
Generals gathered in their masses.
So everyone knows the famous motif, right? Huge decay in the cymbals, flat 7 to the minor 1. So cool. This whole song is in the key of E. But like I said, there's this push and pull between the sort of like major and minor feel, and you really notice it immediately on the verse vocals. By the way, big shout out to Dan Barracuda for inspiring this video here. Go check out his channel. He does basically the same thing I do, but in shorts. Such a good, underrated channel. Generals gathered in their masses. Whoa, what's going on there, right? So we got generals gathered. That's the major third, right? Major third. And because we're playing the flat 7 before, you know, it sort of feels like we should be in a minor key, but here we are playing that major, right? Generals gathered in their masses, just like witches at black masses. Whoa, but we're playing the minor third on the way down, right?
Just like witches at black masses.
So the contour of this melody that Ozzy is singing, right? It goes up and then it goes back down, right? A major lift and a minor fall. Really, really cool. It's sort of, again, like this push and pull between this major and minor feel. However, because we are playing the minor 7 or the, you know, the flat 7, this actually makes the song in mixolydian for the part, right? Mixolydian, and then it goes back down in just the classic E minor scale. So mixolydian is essentially just the minor scale with a major third, right? 1, 2, 3, major third. So yeah, mixolydian is major, but it just feels like a little bit darker as compared right to the minor scale, which right, 1, 2, 3, minor third, 6, 7, 8. Really, really cool mix of major and minor there. So he plays that every time he sings, right? It's very ritualistic. He sings the exact same melody line the whole time, right? In the fields of bodies burning, as the war machine keeps turning. Death and hatred. There's that juxtaposition between light and dark again, right? Playing on the major third, saying the word hatred, right? Death and hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed mind. And then, of course, Ozzy does that cool, right? Oh, Lord, yeah. Oh, Lord, yeah. Which again, right, it goes, oh, Lord, yeah. There's that minor third again, right? So again, this grand push and pull between light and dark, major and minor. So cool.
Oh, Lord, yeah.
Well, hello, my friends. We meet again. It has been a while. Where should we begin? Now, today we are talking about and breaking down War Pigs, the first song off of Black Sabbath's 1970 album Paranoid. Now, to me, Paranoid and Black Sabbath, the album, was sort of like the Old and New Testament of metal, right? The foundational building blocks for like everything that came afterward. And War Pigs is just as monumental for the genre as his other classics like Paranoid and the Black Sabbath song itself. Maybe even more so, honestly. War Pigs to me is one of those rare songs which are timeless, evergreen, if you will, applicable to humans everywhere at any time. The best art in history has this timeless appeal, and I think War Pigs, perhaps above maybe any other Black Sabbath or even any metal song, really has this sort of timeless energy and this very sort of evergreen feel. Like anybody can relate to this at any time. And even today, it is still extremely, extremely relevant. Now, I think most people who are Black Sabbath fans are aware that the song was originally called Walpurgis. Walpurgis? Either one. Which was named after Walpurgis Night. This is one of many Christian feasts and holidays which we don't really celebrate anymore, like Michaelmas, but used to be a very, very important feast and celebration. In the West, we kind of forgotten most of them, right? Besides Easter, Christmas, of course, right? However, Walpurgis Night is also one of the semi-annual Sabbats where witches would gather to do whatever they would go and do, right? So it became this sort of double meaning. And over the years, as a celebration for Saint Walpurgia faded, the day became much more intimately associated with dark magic and evil forces, right? So much so that Walpurgis Night, whatever, became the Witches' Night, and even the Church of Satanism chose this day for its founding, which is kind of funny that has a founding. Now, none of this has really required knowledge to understand the metaphor for this song, right? But I thought it would be nice to explain to you all sort of kind of the history behind it, I guess, and what's the relationship. Now, the label changed the name from Walpurgis to War Pigs, a faithful decision, which I can't help but think helps the song deliver its message much more directly and impactfully, as Satanism has become more or less kind of like a cringy joke now here in 2026, but the metaphor of a war pig is evergreen. And regardless, that may be one of the few record label meddlings which greatly improved a song. And according to Geezer Butler, actually all the lyrics were finalized even before the name change of the song, so it all works so well in the end there. War Pigs is the name of the song. Now, the song really brings out a sort of ritual-like feeling to it here. There are a lot of these sort of meandering jam-like sections, this sort of pull between light and dark, like I explained. Geezer, Tony, and Bill jam around these common motifs before, right, everything is snapped to attention when the vocals start. Really cool effect that they have somehow managed to combine this sort of like eerie, bubbling cauldron feel of a witch's mass with the stand to attention of like a military commander, right? Dana, right? Shoulders back, chest out. Really, really cool. A metaphor which carries on the lyrics, so this sort of double symbolism in the music and the lyrics. Which, by the way, if you like this type of musical in-depth content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I also stream every Friday. Come hang out. I also have a second channel where I post stream highlights and other less serious sloppage, so make sure to subscribe to that one if you're interested. Now, another thing which I think is very, very notable for the song is that every member more or less has several solo sections or parts where they stand out, right? The most obvious, of course, being Tony's solos and Ozzy's chilling vocals during the verses, but we also have Bill Ward's many excellent and very, very tasteful drum fills. The song and various breaks in the music and during the music. Such great drumming here. And of course, the great Geezer Butler, who really, really meanders around the notes being set by Tony Iommi, but slides in and out of grooves with Bill Ward. He really gives the song momentum, right? It almost feels like the entire song is kind of like soloing in his regard, right? With some of the best bass playing of all time, every member really gets their time to shine here, which makes the chorus hit even harder, as it's basically the only time in the song that vocals, bass, and drums are all locked horns together. Politicians hide themselves away. Really makes that part feel very driving and cohesive. Also just want to mention the production choices here as well. The bass is actually hard panned in the left speaker while the main guitar track is hard panned on the right. There does sound to be some sort of double tracking of the rhythm guitars in some sections, and I think maybe there's really low in the mix, which fills out the sound of the left speaker, but it's like a really stark and old sounding production style because, well, it's from 1970, 56 years ago. And to be honest, this type of production just oozes soul. It kind of sounds weird when you listen to it on headphones, but if you listen to it on a nice sound system, it all sounds so fantastic, and every instrument really, really has their own space in the mix here. Great, soulful mix. I love it. Now, the song begins with these held guitar notes and the bass bubbling underneath it. Bill Ward really here plays like a very, very swung type of beat. It sounds intoxicated in a way, right? Bringing forth this sort of image of like a drunken mass of people in the dark under the sway of not only drink and perhaps other substances, intoxicated by the ritual itself, right? Intoxicated by this dark power. Right, you have like the ritual, the drunken feel combined with an air raid siren. Really, really cool linking of those two things, right? Now, right, the song starts out with this. Right, just the root. Tony Iommi just plays that, right? And then, of course, it goes to the flat 7 again. And, you know, it feeds out back nicely. If I was playing from my real amp instead of just the amp sim on the computer, right, you would hear the feedback. But, you know, it sort of foreshadows what's going to be coming in the verses here. Because, right, we go to the minor 7. You almost think we should be going up here to the 3rd, right? Instead, however, he goes from here. And what is that? That is the major 3rd again, right? So you go. And he really lets that, you know, major 3rd and the octaves and like the root of E really ring out, right? However, again, similar and more emphasizing the sort of like push and pull, light and dark, good and bad. Underneath, Geezer Butler is actually playing the minor 3rd as well, right? So over top of this. And just imagine I'm playing bass, right? Geezer Butler plays this. I didn't mean to squealy that there, sorry. Right, so he's playing. So he's playing the minor 3rd, right? Root over top of like the root and the major 3rd. Geezer Butler touches on that minor 3rd, right? So you really get this like push and pull. However, he, you know, kind of gives it like a half bend. So it's like. So he kind of bends it like half step up into the major 3rd. Really, really cool touch there by the band. And it really, again, brings out this sort of like bubbling, drunk feel to it, especially the intro there. Just such a great wall of sound as well. This ritualistic feel is then all instantly snapped to attention by the band playing that da-na with those long pauses in between. Side note, I really love how long it takes for the cymbals to decay here. It just sounds great. The crash cymbals like ring out forever, it sounds like. Love that production choice. Nowadays, you would probably cut those short manually, but I just love how they ring out. It's just, yeah, it's just great, man. It just sounds so good. You know, it really makes me think of like maybe the leader of the ritual starts casting a spell or maybe gesturing symbolically with his hands, snapping everyone into attention, right? Either way, the drunken crowd is immediately brought into attention, right? The drunken feeling completely gone, replaced with this very like stern and rigid and almost like militaristic feel to the instruments and vocals to come. Again, this is all just very like ritualistic too, right? Like this all has to be done correctly and without mistake. That's why it sort of snaps right in really hard, like locked in together, right? Sounds like a general calling his troops to attention. Really, really incredible songwriting and musical symbolism here by the band. So good, man. Now, I'll talk about the chorus right away. I just want to talk about the second verse really quick. Just so sick, man. That whole part is just so sick. And then, of course, we get right back to that same thing right there. And this is where it really, really starts to get cool. Again, in the second verse, the notes and the choices really start to matter here, right? Now in darkness on the major 3rd. Now in darkness, words are turning, ashes where the body's burning. That's just like the E minor pentatonic, right? Again, but it has that minor 3rd in it rather than major 3rd. No more war pigs have the power. War pigs on the major 3rd there, right? Hand of God has struck the hour. So cool. Begging mercy. Mercy on the major 3rd there, right? Begging mercies for the sins. And then, right, the last thing where he talks about Satan spreading his wings back on the minor scale. Satan laughing spreads his wings. Oh, Lord, yeah. Just so sick, man. It's so cool. I love how Ozzy Osbourne's word choices match right on like the major and minor thirds. They're just so cool and just such an interesting way. I've never really heard another song sort of mix these major and minor feels in a way that doesn't feel forced or unnatural. And that's like the real genius of the song here. Again, like this push and pull between light and dark. It's just so cool and fascinating and honestly still fresh today. So sick. This very loose and jam-like feel makes the sections underneath where the vocals and instruments lock horns even more impactful, right? Especially during the chorus of the song, where Ozzy starts belting his vocals over top of the sort of rumbling, machine-like palm muting chugging right underneath. That palm muting chugging becomes sort of like the defining sound of metal. So now the verse riff is pretty cool, right? You got, obviously this famous, there's that same motif from earlier that we go back, right? Whole song is just kind of pedaling between those two chords, the minor one and the flat 7 there, right? Not only does it go down chromatically from the minor third there, right? But then Tony hits that minor third again and does like the little accent. Really, really cool. Again, so sort of implying a very minor feel. Then we get into the chorus riff, right? Everybody think knows this one. Pretty cool ass riff. There's those like great palm muted chugs. This might be like the first metal song with like, the open E palm muted, which really became like the sound of metal to me, right? The sort of like that's metal, right? And then of course we're playing, what is that? That's an E minor chord, right? Minor third again. So again, it's sort of suggesting that the chorus here is in E minor. Then when Ozzy's vocals start playing, we get a little slightly different variation of that riff. But over top of that, Ozzy is singing something different, right? So we're going minor third. Ozzy is singing, however, again, there is that major third. Time will tell on their power, major third will minds. Again, Ozzy is singing the major third over top of a riff that's very suggesting a minor scale feel, right? So he's playing this. Ozzy's singing that note. Really like a real sort of like crunchy feel. And that's why I think the song is like a real karaoke killer, because it's unnatural for people to sing that note over top of like an E minor feel, right? But Ozzy does that. Politicians hide themselves away. It's just so cool, just such a mix, and it's why the song is such a like unique feel to it, right? It's kind of suggesting major and minor at the exact same time. Again, like this sort of evil push and pull, light and dark nature of the whole thing, which ties in like symbolically with the song as well, right? So essentially, this is blind, right? You go this minor third, the root, with the minor 7. So that, like, those are the notes that are being played there, right? So cool. And then on the next round, he goes, they only started the war. So yeah, he ends the second phrase, they only started the war, by ending and holding the major third. Really cool. War. Wait till the judgment day comes. Yeah, yeah. And he kind of sings that. Again, again, on the major third over top of this riff. Just so cool, man. And then right after he stops singing, we get right back to like a very decidedly E minor feel, right? So kind of cool. They're kind of, yeah, again, E minor before, and then in between in the chorus, it's kind of suggesting both at the same time, this push and pull of light and dark. Just so goddamn cool, man. This song is just so sick when you got to start stripping back the layers. And of course, right, this isn't even talking about all the cool stuff and interesting notes that Geezer is playing underneath, and of course the genius drumming of Bill Ward. When Tony Iommi's solo starts, again, he applies that very Mixolydian feel. Kind of going right major. Right, very Mixolydian feel, just so cool, so cool. And then he plays like a nice bluesy solo. We got a whole bunch of different notes in there, just so sick, right?
Yo, editing Chris here. I forgot to mention in the video, and I can't believe I forgot to mention it, that Tony Iommi's solo after the chorus here is just so cool. I think it's triple tracked, so there's like a main solo in the right ear, one down the middle, and then one to the left. And he plays it slightly differently in each track, it sounds like, too. Really creates this sort of like cackling, very evil, like flurry of notes feel. Like it almost sounds like witches laughing in like a dark mass. You know what I mean? It sounds like cackling. It's just so cool. Here, take a listen.
Really great stuff here, and the lyrics I find are very interesting as well. Of course, right, we are comparing military generals to witches using dark magic. The lyrics describe this very dark and sort of dangerous like seduction which the power of military has, and how it corrupts people in sort of the same way that dark magic does, right? The first two lines make a comparison ever so direct. Quote, generals gathered in their masses, just like witches at black masses. Normally, I think rhyming a word with the same word could be rather lazy, but here it is making the comparison to the two very direct and clear, right? There is no mistaking anything here. Generals in like their war cabinets are exactly like witches gathering to use dark magic at a black mass. Great stuff here. Quote, evil minds that plot destruction, sorcerer of death's construction, end quote. Here they compare destruction and construction, two words which are polar opposites, but here again, there's like another perversion which sees death being constructed by these generals and comparing them to a sorcerer of dark magic, right? So this dark sorcerer is constructing death. Very cool line here. Quote, in the fields, the body's burning as the war machine keeps turning. Death and hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed minds, end quote. Really great imagery here as well. We can think of this sort of mass burning of bodies in the aftermath of like a battle in like a Napoleonic sense, right? Or the more modern use of like napalm and burning people and all that stuff. All the while, the war machine crassusly keeps moving on despite the calamity around them, right? Here we see that the generals engaged in these dark rituals are having their minds poisoned and corrupted by hatred and death towards mankind. Some real very visceral metaphors and imagery here, made all the more impactful, of course, by Ozzy's voice singing these lines alone during the breaks in the music, right? Really makes these lines even more impactful. It's right in your face. Quote, politicians hide themselves away. They only started the war. Why should they go out to fight? They leave all that to the poor. Yeah. You can leave out the yeah. Time will tell on their power minds, making war just for fun, treating people just like pawns in chess. Wait till their judgment day comes, end quote. Now, I really like, again, how blunt these lyrics are. There's no real metaphors here besides one, right? Politicians start these wars. They send the poor out to fight on their behalf, to suffer, to die, to be mulched by artillery and speared upon bayonets, to be sacrificed, right? Just like how pawns and chess are used to block and delay an enemy advance towards the king. Really cool metaphor here. Great stuff. And I love how it ends on the sort of nebulous threat of their judgment day comes. To me, this not only signifies like a Christian religious undertone to it, but also echoes some of the past revolutions, right? The French Revolution and Russian revolutions specifically. But you can also think of like the Spartacus Rebellion in Germany or the Nuremberg trials after the Second World War. These are all sort of like judgment days for the elites and generals, right? You gotta remember, World War II was only 25 years before writing the song, right? After the chorus comes, the band moves on into the same sort of chromatic descending riff, which to me always felt like a descent back into madness. Great drumming again by Bill Ward here. This must have just been kind of mind-blowing when it came out back in 1970, I could only imagine. Then we get a sort of extended guitar solo section by Tony Iommi. The section, which I am not even going to attempt to play because I am trash, under which Geezer and Bill really start to get into a great groove. Again, sort of begging this image of like a chaotic black mass where everyone is under the influence of this dark power, right? It almost feels kind of drunk in a way, drunk on power, drunk on hatred, right? The band then casually slips back to playing almost the exact same thing as the intro, although this time with much more momentum in it. Really cool to bring it right back before the band is snapped back to attention, throwing it back to the intro again, right? Almost every time we listen to the song, you get so wrapped up in the instrumental jam, the solo, that you almost forget that there's another complete verse to come. It's almost like a surprise every single time. Just love it, man. Quote, "Now in darkness, world stops turning. Ashes wear their bodies burning. No more war pigs have the power. Hand of God has struck the hour." End quote. I have always found to be just extremely powerful. You can almost view this in three different ways. One, the war pigs' dark ritual has succeeded and has destroyed everything, right, in this sort of frenzy, orgy of hatred and death, which of course, as mankind is destroyed, then who do the war pigs have power over? The grand paradox of dark magic that is the users often destroy themselves in the process here. So that's one meaning. And then two, we have a great betrayal, and the war pigs would like naively let loose evil forces far beyond their control. A grand ironic twist now as the forces of darkness are in charge, and now the war pigs are pawns at their feet as well. Thirdly, there's some sort of like religious event. Maybe it was indeed the hand of God striking them down, or perhaps, you know, this like bottom-up revolution which has destroyed everything but overthrown the dark war pigs in the process. Great stuff. Quote, "Day of judgment, God is calling. On their knees, the war pigs crawling, begging mercies for their sins. Satan laughing spreads his wings." End quote. I love how we can interpret this last verse again in many different ways, in contrast nicely to the first set of lyrics, right in the first verse, which is ever so crystal clear in its meaning. Regardless of what you think the meaning is here, this last verse is just so powerful and just full of grand imagery, right? The war pigs, they're crawling on their knees. These generals, right? You can imagine their medals on their chests and their hats, crawling on their knees, begging for judgment and mercy upon them. It's so powerful and vivid, you can just picture it. However, it isn't God they are crawling towards, it is Satan himself. Again, just so starkly vivid, right? You can picture a great evil demon laughing at all these naive war pigs crawling before him. There will be no mercy for them as he spreads his wings, casting a huge shadow over the land, blocking out the sun, which shines desperately through the smoke from all the bodies being burned. He flaps his gigantic wings, ashes sent skyward as the great evil flies over his domain, laughing. This is his realm now, the realm of earth, all due to the grand corruption and evil of the war pigs itself.
Satan laughing spreads his wings. Oh, Lord, yeah.
This could be a literal happening, right? As if Satan was unleashed on Earth himself, or some sort of metaphysical, like these war pigs are sent to judgment after they die. But of course, like it isn't God, but Satan who's laughing, claiming their souls. Either way, it is just so fantastically dark, moving, powerful, chilling. Again, even made even more so again by having this lone voice in the breaks in the music saying this. Just chills every single time, man. It's so good. And then we get to Luke's wall part where they play this really cool on like the E7, right? So cool, just like a really unique riff, and it kind of comes out of nowhere and just totally changes the feel of it. But then we move down to, again, that flattened 7, playing another 7 chord. That flattened 7th with the minor 7th on top. So many 7th words. I know, it's crazy. But then after that, right, we get a little bit more diddles and stuff. 5 to the 6. To the 5 again. And they kind of really, and they hang on that 5 for so long, build so much tension. We never really hear that flat 6 chord here until that song, so it's like... Almost like we're being snapped out of the ritual, right? And then, oh, this is just so satisfying. Oh, buddy. Oh, just so good. And now we're finally firmly in the minor key, right? That's all straight minor key, right? So good. Oh, bro, it's just so good. It really feels like a huge release after the whole song having this sort of tension. Are we in E minor? Are we in E mixolydian? Major and minor thirds to finally get that just grand riff. One of the best riffs ever, in my opinion. Just so good. Just... bro, it's so epic, just so final. It really sounds like Judgment Day or something like that, right? Again, like metal would be using this riff so many times again, right? Again, right, you know. And then Tony Iommi goes into like another great solo, and it's just so cool, man. I just love how we go from like this, right? Bam, 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 bam. Hang on it, hang on it, hang on it. Let that tension build and then release. Oh, man. Just so good, man. I just love it how after the whole song, like 5 minutes of sort of modal ambiguity, we finally lock in Judgment Day. It's here, you know, with that riff. It's just so sick, man. One of the greatest riffs of all time. I just love it so much. I am unsure exactly what Luke's wall is meant to mean. I assume maybe some sort of reference to the Gospel of Luke. Although I'm unsure, guys. If you would like, I would love to hear your thoughts on what it means, so leave that down below in the comments. Now, Luke's Wall, again, contains like a great solo section, a nice jam section, and of course, one of the greatest metal riffs in history after that jam ends and it sort of locks everything together, and they jam it out until the end of the song. Now, War Pigs is a true masterpiece, not only in heavy metal, but I would argue art as a whole. Blending together these sort of like old folklore traditions, Walpurgis and witches, and combining them with this new modern like heavy metal sound and relating it to the generals of the time, the Vietnam War, is just so genius. It makes the song just so transcendent towards all of human history, right? You can imagine a person living in medieval times would be able to relate to this song, person living in Roman times, pretty much anywhere, right? Every society has these sort of war pigs. And that's what really makes the song have such a universal appeal, along with the sort of musicality of this light and dark push and pull that I've described on guitar here, the major and the minor feel. It's just such a masterpiece, man. If there's another piece of music we can send on the Voyager spacecraft to another potential civilization, throw War Pigs on here, man. It's just like the definition of heavy metal for me. So good. I've been Varvis. If you like this, remember to subscribe. Cheers.